So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the New England Food System Planners Partnership webinar on our report, New England Feeding New England, a Regional Approach to Food System Resilience. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Leah Rovner. I'm the project director for New England Feeding New England, which is a 10-year initiative to have 30% of the food produced in New England consumed in New England by 2030. This past April, our partnership was joined by designated representatives from each of the 6 New England agricultural agencies, all represented here.
So our collective efforts in this 30 by 30 effort is going to be focusing on expanding and fortifying the region's food supply and distribution systems so that they're equitable and inclusive, and that they ensure the availability of adequate, affordable, socially and culturally appropriate products under a variety of rapidly changing climate, environmental, and public health conditions. So what we know, New England has the capacity, the ability, and the ingenuity to create a food system that is more self-reliant, but the current food system currently has many barriers to doing so. So the timeline that we have been functioning under, we started this project back in 2021 with a large planning grant from USDA Regional Food System Partnership Program. And we hired a number of researchers to get going in the fall of 2021. And as Leah mentioned, we released the report in June of 2023. So we're currently in phase 2, where we are holding a number of convenings like we are today and beginning the process of moving towards implementation, and through those convenings of being able to talk with all of you about how could we use this foundational research to move forward in the region. The actual report itself contains 7 components. All of these are available on our website for download. So what do we actually produce across the region? As many of you already have a sense of, our leading product categories include fisheries, dairy, and vegetables. But it is clear that we do produce a wide range of products across the region. We also have a lot of food that's manufactured and various types of processing that takes place across the region, from cheese and beer to meat, baked goods, and many more. So what can we do to think more like a region? That's really one of the central questions here, is what can we do to help consumers in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, for instance, to care about the farmers and fishers in Maine? And how can Maine farmers and fishers realize how important they are to Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts consumers, for instance? So keeping this in mind throughout the research was vital for us. In terms of some of the key findings, here are some very high-level findings from the report. In Volume 1, we focused on what would need to change in order to move from the way we eat today as a region to one that is more resilient and supplied through regional production. And Brian Donahue will be stepping into shortly here to get into more details on Volume 1. In Volume 2, we explored how much land would be needed to achieve the 30% by 2030 goal. And it turns out it's quite a bit. Close to 1 million acres is needed, both from across the region, which includes 401,000 acres of existing underutilized farmland and an additional 588,000 acres from cleared land. So likely land that has been once been in agricultural production that is in the early stages of returning to forest. That's what we're talking about in terms of cleared land. Then in Volume 3, we explored the economic impact of New England's food system using the in-plan modeling software. And in Volume 4, we explored all of the different kinds of market channels in our region, and considered which ones offer the greatest opportunity to source more local and regional food from regional consumers for them to obtain. And Holly Fowler is going to be joining us in a little bit here to cover the details of Volume 4. So as I mentioned, one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is that of preparing our food supply for climate change. And this slide shows the projected risks of climate change by county for things like extreme rainfall, hurricanes, sea level rise, water stress, wildfires, and heat stress. And as I indicated, another one of our big common challenges is around food insecurity for far too many New Englanders. Collectively, New England's rate of food insecurity spiked during the Great Recession, as it did across the entire United States. It did not decrease until after 2015. And then we all know that the COVID pandemic hit, and that sharply increased food insecurity in the region for a while. One of the persistent challenges we face is the loss of our agricultural and land base over time. So while this has stabilized somewhat over the past 10 years, our research shows that we need to both maintain our existing productive agricultural land, better utilize 400,000 acres of otherwise existing ag land, and clear another 590,000 acres for new ag production in order to achieve 30% by 2030. The data clearly shows that we have a lot of work ahead of us to ensure racial equity around farmland ownership. In 2020, 28.7% of New England's population was made up of people of color. However, farms with any producer reporting race or ethnicity as Hispanic, Latino, Black, Indigenous, or Asian, along or in combination with other races, made up just 4.9% of farms, working just 2.5% of all farmland. To expand food access, we also need to make progress on overcoming the cost of farmland. On this slide, you can see the average cost per acre of land across all 6 states, and efforts are needed to reduce this cost, especially in order to ensure access to new beginning and BIPOC farmers, especially those not coming from farm families or who come from well-resourced households. So one of the key aspects of the research that was done by the team was looking at what's called regional self-reliance, or RSR. And so in the slide, what you can see here is the mean production across various 7 different food groups is what we're actually producing right now here in Vermont, in New England, between and the average by pounds across New England between 2010 and 2019, sort of that average of what are we actually producing. And as it turns out, we're producing over 6.5 billion pounds of food across these 7 food categories. Now, then we looked at, well, what are we actually consuming in the region? Meaning, from the USDA food availability data, what do we know we're actually consuming? And that is 31.7 billion pounds of food. So if you think about that ratio, then you arrive at a mean regional self-reliance of 20.7% in total. But you can see here that dairy, we're 44% regionally self-reliant on dairy, 31.7% on vegetables, 6.4% on fruit. So it's really only dairy and vegetables that we're actually regionally self-reliant. And what we know from the data of what we're producing is that we're not producing, of the vegetables we're producing, it's not evenly done across the different types of vegetables. So 82.3% are starchy vegetables, and that's primarily potatoes from Maine. In the protein side of things, we are regionally self-reliant on seafood, but we know again that the majority of that is actually exported out of the region. The good news is that between all of the different types of vegetables and across these different types of proteins, we can actually produce more. We have the soils, we have the fisheries. We could actually be producing more and consuming more in the region. So as I've been mentioning, we did then calculate what would it take in terms of a land base. Now, from a land-based agricultural perspective, if we were to go from our current production to this 30% regional self-reliance, that would require increasing, this is actually done by servings, not by pounds, we would need 400,000 of existing underutilized cropland to come into fuller production, and 590,000 acres of new cropland would need to be brought into production. You can see sort of what that mix looks like in this slide. We know that likely the areas that are easiest to bring into further production would be in Maine, in northern Maine, in Vermont, and in northern parts of New Hampshire, and some areas of western Massachusetts. That's where the current most amount of land-based agriculture is taking place, and that's where we would be looking to try to expand going forward.